Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle May in my series Freemasonry and Satanism. Lordy, the more that I research, the more bizarre it gets. People don't want to believe what I'm about to say, but I suppose we better believe. Because it's real. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's real. Global world order. Preparations, apparently, fulfilling biblical prophecy. Doesn't promise to be too good for the rest of us. So what do you know about prophecy? What does prophecy say? Let's look at a picture for a second. What does prophecy say? What does prophecy say? Do you know? Does this picture hurt your eyes? Does it hurt you? Do you want to turn away? Or do you want to look at it? What does prophecy say? The Battle of Armageddon. And they have all these people telling us you can see the signs. The 4 blood moons, 2014, Passover. And man shall be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, becoming of the great and terrible day of the Lord. Looks like a Lisa Haven video there. Judgment is coming. Just saying. Used to be called Palestine. But now the whole area looks like it's Israel. The United Nations Security Council is likely to establish a Palestinian state, which would declare that a divided Jerusalem is the capital of both Israel and a Palestinian state, and would set the 1960 borders as the final borders between the two nations. So how did they get Palestine? Balfour Agreement during World War I when Britain was losing the war? And the Jews came along and said, hey, we can turn the tide. We can bring the United States into the war. We put our man, President Woodrow Wilson, in office. He does our bidding. Hey, he even assisted us in taking control of the United States money supply. December 21st, 1913. Created the Federal Reserve, a privately owned banking system. For 50 years, the United States resisted these peoples from taking control. Several presidents were assassinated. President Lincoln wanted the United States to print its own money. He was killed. President John Kennedy, said that secret societies are repugnant to the American way of life and I intend to expose them. He was assassinated, and so on and so on. So prophecy. Just looking at my pictures here, what can we expect? A lunar eclipse occurs when the Earth passes between the sun and the moon. When some of the sun's rays curve around the Earth, it causes the moon to appear red during a total eclipse. This is referred to as a blood moon. When 4 consecutive lunar eclipses are all total eclipses, this is known as a tetrad. So this is what is happening in September 2015 video. So we've been getting these warnings for quite a while. And I'm reminded of the Freemasons and the Rosicrucians and the Kabbalah. And maybe this particular religion involving apparently astrology, the pyramid. I see angels in this picture. Down below, lions, some strange looking people here, naked with glowing heads. What do these pictures mean? Notice the two birds above the tree, and they each have a globe or two globes under their feet. Looks like they're carrying some kind of globes. Is that a symbol for planets? What is the Kabbalah? And way up above is the Hebrew writing in this picture. What the heck are we dealing with? So the book I want to make another video on is this one. Jewish Activities in the United States. Volume 2 of the International Jew. The world's foremost problem, it says on this book. And the other ones I made videos on. Oops, falling out of my hand. So there's a series of 4 if you can get these books. I suspect they don't want you to have them. And series 71.4, YouTube took it down and gave me a warning on my account recently. I showed that in a previous video. So I have these 4 books, and this will be part 7. So as you can see, I can go to these books and make more videos for quite a while. We do have a problem, and it looks like they're trying to make this kind of stuff, talking about it, hate speech. And the New World Order needs to make that illegal. And it looks like part of the way they got there was with 911 in the same book. So what's the story here? What is going on? I was looking at No More News, so I made a couple clips. But it does look like that they want to rebuild King Solomon's temple. In the Islamic religion, one of their holy sites is the Dome of the Rock that sits at the site of the ancient King Solomon's temple. So apparently they need to move it or destroy it, and they're serious. Think about this prophecy. Take a look at this clip. I just want to show these things before I read from the book and get kind of familiar with what we're talking about. Preparations for this global world order. Preparations for the fulfillment of some kind of crazy prophecy. I'm telling you.
And so moving on, we showed the war, the reparations. Saudi king tells U.S. that it must have, that's probably old news. I bet that's off the table now. What else do we have here? So here is what else we're talking about. Can the third temple be built without destroying the Dome of the Rock? So this could be something else that they're negotiating. Hand over control to Saudi Arabia and then negotiate to move the Dome of the Rock in Al-Aqsa to Saudi Arabia, where the other holiest Muslim sites reside in Mecca. So New Jewish Interfaith Initiative hopes to show that Jews' end-of-days vision could harmoniously accommodate Islam's present architectural hegemony on the Temple Mount. And so they've got other... There's the minority, there's a different opinion that you can build the third temple next to the Dome of the Rock and that's okay, or you can move it, or a lot of them that say it has to go right where the temple is, right over it. That's where their special cube is, where the Ark of the Covenant.
You cannot make this stuff up. And I highly suggest people take it seriously and look it up. It's almost Makes me speechless to talk about it. So think about this. The Freemasons building replicas of King Solomon's temple. The two columns in front of the temple, Joachim and Bose. The Freemasonic symbols. Freemasons have had leading, controlling positions in the United States, in the Senate, in the House of Representatives, in the presidency. And they build these replicas of King Solomon's temple. So they are the secret forces behind the scenes that nobody suspects, that is among us everywhere, every town, every city, even almost all over the world. It even says it in this picture, Masonic world, the Messiah, King Solomon's temple. And it says in this picture, the wonderful world of Freemasonry. Freemasons assisting the Zionists, the Jewish people worldwide, Israel, in fulfilling prophecy, and they are seriously anti-Christian. Are you awake? Do you think this is just a innocent thing? Nothing to worry about. I don't like how this camera doesn't focus when I want it to. What's that picture tell you? This is no small thing. Does this picture look like a small thing? Would you say this is a symbol for the coming of God, of Jesus? Or would you say this is a symbol for the coming of the Antichrist? Look at the wings on these characters, the faces. The coming of God, Jesus, or the Antichrist. The coming of God, or Jesus, or the Antichrist. Seriously. They know not what they do. Does that sound like an appropriate phrase for these guys? Focus! Look at this picture here. It says Lucifer on top by the eye. See, do you suppose that's God or Jesus, or is it Lucifer? Is it what it says it is? It says Lucifer on the top of this Freemasonic picture. And in the Morals and Dogma, the Bible for the Freemasons, twice it mentions Lucifer. I believe Albert Pike says when you get to be 32, 31, and 33-degree Freemason at the very top, you are told that their deity is really Lucifer, also known as the morning star, also known to be from the underworld. I've gone over that. I just ran across this picture. I've said this song a couple times. So why don't I say it again? In history, we read of a Freemason king. The glory of Israel, his praise let us sing. He who built a great fabric, as we understand, on Mount Moriah in Jerusalem. I had to do that, just because it sounds so funny. So with that said, let's look at another video, and maybe people will take it serious. They're going to build this third temple, King Solomon's temple, and everything they're doing with the secret passage of the Noahide laws in 1991, and recently the Shehendran, the government religious rulership of Israel, the same people who had Jesus Christ crucified 2,000 years ago. They're getting a hold of our government and President Trump, pushing to start enforcing the Noahide laws, which I guess you have to acknowledge their deity. And if you say bad things about their deity, blasphemy, heresy, the death penalty, beheading. Look at this video.
Have a huge, it'll throw a monkey wrench into the plans if Netanyahu loses, unless they have other people in place. WorldNet Daily. So the crowning achievement, and we have here, the campaign was launched to create a gold crown for the Messiah as a symbol of our belief that this period of waiting has ended. And then the symbolism that Jared Kushner is, there he is in the crown, depicted in the crown. And of course, I've gone over this in other videos, Kushner and paying more for any office building ever, this 666 building on Fifth Avenue in New York. We all know about that. 666, the most expensive building in U.S. history. Kushner Companies. And then he did the deal, he sold it for a loss, I believe, to Carlyle Group, who has all types of shady connections. Here is Dig. It's a little character, a little messianic figure, which was a show on TV about blowing up the Dome of the Rock and fulfilling end times prophecy. And there's a scene in it where they have the red heifer that they have to sacrifice, which that is in the news also, that they believe they have a certified rabbi-approved Hefner. Jim Carrey painted Jared Kushner as the devil, essentially on fire with money in his eyes, and the 666 behind there. And it looks eerily similar to The Omen and other things in.
I don't really want to disparage people, insult people, talk down to people. I didn't know what I know now, so I was one of those people. But I will say, these evil forces have been busy for a long time. George Washington was a Freemason. But you know, a lot of people can belong to those organizations and not really know what's going on. The puppet masters, the manipulators, are using everybody. And apparently that involves the creation of the United States. To be some kind of warrior and police the world for the Zionist Kabbalist Jewish types, not all Jewish people. A lot of Jewish people are opposed to this, trying to expose it. A lot of Jewish people have written books and made famous speeches. So how can anybody actually be anti-Semitic when a lot of Jewish people have been trying to warn the world of this threat? And a lot of non-Jews are in cahoots with these Kabbalist synagogue of Satan types. The symbols are everywhere. George Washington's one of their leading deities. And he warned about them. I don't know where these pictures came from, but apparently we need to wake up. Another president, Mason. And I did show this picture once before. But notice the women, one of them is coming out of a lamp. And the other one seems to be coming out of a beehive. So I think it symbolizes the spiritual realm. And in the Arab world, the Middle East, from darkness to light, do you believe it? And they got the lady coming out of the lamp and the other one coming out of a beehive. So obviously a reference to a genie. And in the Middle East, the Arabs, the Islamic people, they call it a jinn. And they say it's the same thing as your American demon. Even this picture of George Washington has his hand as above, so below. And all across America and the world, they have their monuments. King Solomon Temple. In the Masonic tradition, is there any doubt in anybody's mind that these things that are going on in the world today are not connected? And this includes World War I, World War II, the Great Depression between the two world wars, 9/11, and all the overthrow of countries and assassination of presidents and the wrecking of countries and economies and social destruction and psychology and mind control and social conditioning and assassination to people who get in the way. Going all the way back to George Washington's time. And where are we today? President Donald Trump recently announced that the United States of America recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, something they've been fighting for 300 years. They brought us World War I, World War II, 9/11. To get where they are today, they are preparing to build the temple. The temple coin. Apparently, it's supposed to be worth about a half a shekel. So when you go to pilgrimage to give thanks at the temple, you have to bring a donation. So they have the half shekel coin. And there you have President Donald Trump's face overlaid King Cyrus, and it even says it on this coin. The Balfour Agreement, Trump Declaration recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. 2017, apparently, to 1917. Temple coin, King Cyrus, the last king who helped the Jews rebuild the second temple, which apparently God had destroyed it twice. They're back. And they're serious. Like doves to their nest. President Trump. Who would have thunk that? And apparently he was knighted. He's obviously one of them. But you know, he was prepared for this. Focus. You can go online and look up President Trump's mansion and find the pictures. I don't want to believe this is a picture of his mansion, but that's where I found it. Look at the painting in the back above his bed. Is there something we're missing here? His condo or mansion in New York City looks like a Masonic temple. Look at the columns. Look at the ceiling. The candles. Oh my. So you think he's the president by accident? Unbelievable. Houston, I believe we have a problem. Interesting pictures. Yahoo image site. There's the columns out front. Unbelievable. I got pictures of his family here, but I didn't think it was appropriate for me to be doing that. Showing those pictures that you can find at Yahoo image site. I have a couple more pictures here. And we'll read from the book. Exploding the myths surrounding a biblical king. The secrets of Solomon's temple. So you know, a lot of people have been mind controlled, social conditioning, taught that Jesus was a myth. I remember when I was raising two boys years ago, and they brought home, one of them brought home a school book. And the teacher had inserted something in a history book, a page that said Jesus Christ was just another mythical character. I was outraged. That would have been 20-something, 24, 5 years ago. So those people have grown up with the teachings from the schoolrooms, convincing everybody that God isn't real. Meanwhile, they seem to be pretty serious about bringing this Masonic temple for the arrival of some kind of deity and the fulfillment of some kind of prophecy. And you can go down to your city streets and graffiti on railroad cars and buildings and bridges, and you can find this kind of artwork everywhere. So what do you believe? What do you believe? Solomon's chosen wisdom. Look at the rays coming from the sky. What are they planning on building? No More News, Christopher Green. Go watch his current videos on these topics if you want more information. So apparently this big brass tub here with the that the bulls are carrying, that's to bathe the sacrifices. And then where my finger is, you can see the fire. That's where you sacrifice the sacrifices. How does that make you feel? What do you suppose you would put in that huge brass container to bathe that you would take over to this fire and sacrifice? And I do know that Jeff Rentz and another guy were talking, Jordan Maxwell, and Jeff Rentz casually asked him in one of his interviews, do you really think that they're sacrificing people anymore? And Jordan Maxwell said, yes, they are. In the hills all around here, I guess around LA and Hollywood. So I believe all over the country they are sacrificing humans. And part of the synagogue of Satan, witchcraft organizations, even the Illuminati. And it's even in the Hitler's diary that Rabbi Marvin Antelman wrote, that in Hitler's diary they abducted a gypsy man in Munich, Germany, and had him on an altar, sacrificed him to bring forth a deity, some kind of being. And they had a young lady from the cult. Remember, Hitler and his regime were into the Vril Society and Thule Society, the occult. And they had a young lady laying on the altar that apparently the being that was summoned when they sacrificed the young gypsy man in Munich was supposed to impregnate her and bring some kind of superpower being into this dimension. Rabbi Marvin Antelman, in his books, To Eliminate the Opate, Volume 1, To Eliminate the Opate, Volume 2, I've made videos about that. That's what the leader of the Jewish Congress of the United States, the leader of the Jewish Congress of the United States, Rabbi Marvin Antelman, said that was in Hitler's diary. And so much more in those two books by that rabbi who was the leader of the U.S. Jewish Congress. So what do you think? They want to rebuild it like they did many, many, many years ago. Why did God destroy it twice? And apparently, these beings are so monstrous, sinister, evil, that the only way God could rid them from the planet thousands of years ago was to bring about the Great Flood. And tribes all over the world document the Great Flood. And many tribes, including the Hopi Indians and the down there in Ecuador, the caves are evidence, and in Romania, all over the world, apparently some kind of beings assisted a lot of humans to build caves or underground tunnels to survive the Great Flood. So apparently God, whoever he is, wanted to save a remnant of the human beings all over the planet. And he had to destroy the planet. And will he have to destroy it again? Will it get that evil on the planet again? Just saying, they are planning on doing this. It's serious business. They're acting very arrogant and confident. They're doing all kinds of things to make this happen. Just looking at some pictures here. King Solomon's Temple, Yahoo image site. You can find these photos. You can click the link. Apparently the Dome of the Rock has to go. The Islamic holy site. And apparently Christopher Green, or is that his name? True No More News, or Adam Green, I think it's Christopher. He showed another clipping from a newspaper headline calling on the Arabs, communities and states all over the Middle East to join in the program to rebuild King Solomon's Temple. And I thought to myself, how bizarre is that? The whole Middle East has been destroyed by these peoples just so they could rebuild this temple and have this biblical prophecy fulfilled. And basically what it says is their leader will be the Antichrist. And there will be a huge destruction. More pictures, King Solomon's Temple. Inside King Solomon's Temple. So who are they going to say is this Messiah? Will they say it's Jared Kushner or Donald Trump? Some of the pictures of the when apparently the being God, or the bright light on the mountain, gave Moses the 10 Commandments and the instructions on how to build the Ark of the Covenant, the rectangle box made out of gold, apparently to house the deity, the being, like Aladdin's lamp. I guess the box was carrying a being. But God also gave him instructions, if you call that person God, to build a tabernacle, a tented area, like you see here. And King Solomon and King David wanted to build a permanent tabernacle for the Ark of the Covenant. That would be King Solomon's Temple. But you can see here they have a tented area and another tented area inside. The big brass vase, the fire, and apparently they're sacrificing animals to God. Which God? I don't believe the God of the Christian Bible, the New Testament, wants us to sacrifice animals or humans. But apparently witchcraft organizations, Illuminati, and other groups are. There are many people whistleblowing, testifying on YouTube videos with many well-known interviewers who talk about this. Many people who belong to these organizations and escaped tell us about them even driving down the streets in vans and pulling over, abducting a young lady and taking it back to their lore, their hidden facility, cave, dungeon, and sacrificing abducted people. You can go on YouTube and look that up. I don't encourage it, but if you don't believe it, and you have to go look into it, it's a mite disturbing to find out the truth. So you might ask, well, what does all that have to do with what you're going to read, Rick? Jewish Activities in the United States, Volume 2 of the International Jew, the World's Foremost Problem. The topic I want to talk about is chapter XL. I'm not quite sure what XL is. See if I can figure it out. The previous chapter was XXX 1X, so that would be 39. So apparently XL is 40. Why the Jews dislike the Morgenthau report. And I've been talking about Poland in a recent video, and World War I and World War II, and the Balfour Agreement, and then of course Britain after World War I reneged on their agreement, the Balfour Agreement, that if the Jews supplied the money to Britain so they could win the war and bring the United States into World War I, and dropping leaflets and propaganda all over Germany and the world, telling the Jews all over the world, support Britain because Britain has promised us Palestine if they win the war. And the Germans, they've been refusing our efforts to try to get them to help do that. And the United States, they were refusing to help us, so we put our man as president, Woodrow Wilson, when President Taft and a lot of other political officials refused our bidding. But we now have control. We even got President Wilson to have us controlling the United States money supply. So what was in those leaflets? What kind of promises dropping all over Germany where the Jewish people had their Garden of Eden, their utopia, after fleeing countries where they weren't wanted, like Russia, etc., and the turmoil in Poland? Apparently the Poles had occupied Poland for almost 800 years after being banished and banned and exiled from Italy and Spain and France and Britain and other territories. Apparently there's plenty of videos you can go watch on YouTube or websites document all this. A lot of my videos, it's in some of the books. But for 2,000 years, and it's even written in the books I'm going over, and books by the Jewish people, including the Encyclopedia Judaica, that they have been in a terrible situation for 2,000 years, being exiled, even massacred, prosecuted, persecuted, imprisoned, and tortured for 2,000 years. And according to other material, it goes back 5,000 years when you think about their exodus from Egypt with Moses, and then later on when they were sacrificing their sons and daughter to the demon Moloch. God apparently spoke to Jeremiah and sent the king of Babylonia down to Jerusalem to destroy it because they were sacrificing their sons and daughters to the demon Moloch and take them prisoner and all that. So apparently God destroyed them twice. And the prophecy says that they will rebuild King Solomon's temple just before Armageddon. And all these horrific pictures and evidence I've been showing and book reviews I've been going over kind of tell us that this is the case. So this Morgenthau report chapter, I was reading it, as you can see here. Talks about some high-level officials going over to Poland and Germany and the Russian areas. Anyways, going over there to assess the situation, see what's going on, and report back. So these people were supposed to be unbiased and people kind of reporting to Congress what is going on over there. And I'll read for the first sentence here, and it'll tell us a little more. It says here, why the Jews dislike the Morgenthau report. Why the Jews dislike the Morgenthau report. So apparently it was a report that they didn't like. So why didn't they like the report? It seems a far cry from the Jewish question in the United States as to the same question in Poland. But insomuch as the Jews of the United States are constantly referring to Poland for propaganda purposes, in other words, propaganda, deception in the newspapers in Poland to convince the American people and other countries to be swaying in their thinking for their side. So apparently propaganda kind of usually means deception and lies. So propaganda purposes, insomuch as 250,000 Polish Jews arriving in the United States on a schedule made by their brethren here. So they had to use propaganda and say things were so horrific over in Poland that the United States people would agree, and the government, to bring to the United States, at least in this material, 250,000 Jewish people from Poland. And I've been saying all along that they use anti-Semitic hatred as propaganda so they can do these things. And when they brought 250,000 Jewish Polish people to the U.S., and remember, at this time, they controlled the USA money supply. They controlled the Federal Reserve. So I'm certain they could finance all of these people. No need to check your credit report. You're Jewish? How much money you need? You got to buy up some media, create some pornographic material businesses, and buy up some press machines and publishing companies and movie theaters and alcohol, whiskey manufacturing and beer manufacturing, and get into the baseball industry. The money was just endless because they controlled our Federal Reserve. Am I probably putting this together wrongly or rightly? I'm using my brain and I'm thinking. So they're intentionally using propaganda, bringing 250,000 of the Polish Jews to the United States. And back then, they really weren't allowing other countries to immigrate too many people. This was a huge plan to bring a lot of people over here. Polish Jews, as it says in this book. These are copies of articles in Henry Ford, the automaker's newspaper, the Dearborn Independent. And he had to buy a newspaper to get the word out because the regular media controlled by them would not publish this information. So would they construe what I'm saying here, reading from this book, as being a hate speech? And I don't hate anybody. And a lot of Jewish people have tried to warn us. I'm definitely not a fan of the synagogue of Satan. Let's make that clear. If I don't like anything, it's the Satanists and the Luciferians and the Kabbalists and the Talmudists and the people who are into this magic and rituals and controlling the USA money supply, bringing us endless wars, and it looks like they're ready to attack Venezuela. David Icke just put a video out on that. And they're saying all kinds of horrible things about Iran. So they are by no means cautious anymore in all the things that they're doing. They're arrogant. They think they control everything. And of course, here in the United States, they have the surveillance systems and the beast computers monitoring your credit card usage, what you say on a telephone, a GPS, where you go, who you communicate with, what kind of book you might buy or get from the library, videos you might be watching, TV programmings. They've got metadata on all of us. And it's serious business. They have hierarchy of these people on every level of our society, and the political institutions and the religious institutions, the structure of Freemasonry, the kings, the presidents, the prime ministers, every city, every town. There's that I, the G for Gnostic, Luciferic. It's even, I showed you pictures where the I says Lucifer. York Rite. So back to this book. So we know right now they were bringing over 250 Polish Jews to the United States. So this would have been after World War I. That's important. All right, back to the book. So, referring to Poland for propaganda purposes, insomuch as there are 250,000 Polish Jews arriving in the United States on a schedule made by their brethren here. So they're coming to the United States. They control the Federal Reserve, which they created in secrecy when everybody was on Christmas vacation, December 21st, 1913. With Senator Hyde on Jekyll Island. Get it? Jekyll and Hyde? There's always truth to these things. The mad doctor that turned from a good person to a bad person. Jekyll and Hyde. As insomuch as the people of Poland have had their own illuminating experience with the world program, it would seem that Poland has something to teach the United States in this respect. So Poland was sort of, according to the material and research I've been going over, welcomed initially the Jewish people into its country. And usually when they did, a country would gain a lot of wealth and power because allowing the Jewish people to operate from there. And that's why some countries later on who weren't doing very well wanted the Jews to come into that country. But then years later, after they took control of everything, they wanted to get rid of them. And they called them parasites. And again, I must say here, I don't hate Jewish people. A lot of Jewish people are probably not aware of any of this stuff. And a lot of them are speaking out, writing books, making speeches. I've gone over that. So it's just a minute group of people, and apparently controlling larger groups of people, bringing about anti-Semitism in the world so they can huddle these people together, sort of control them like cattle. And they've been doing that in a program called Aliyah for over 100 years. So why don't I show the pictures on Aliyah? Well, as usual, when I want something, it's not readily available. Got so many boxes of pictures and books and papers, and sometimes I get lost in the maze of this research material. But anyways, for the past 100 years, even prior to World War I, they have been recruiting people to move to Israel, Palestine before it was Israel, and having all kinds of celebrations. During World War I, but in between World War I and World War II, and after World War II, and ever since, even today. So they have to keep the heat on. This is an old picture here. So this has been going on for a few hundred years, and apparently it seems to be coming to a head. This is serious business. I do not believe people understand prophecy. What is prophesied to happen? Don't these kids look like people you know? plane after plane load, and then they get on the ground and kiss the ground. Do you suppose there's something religious about that? This camera's ticking me off. Back in the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, 1910, this effort has been going on. And they brought us World War I and World War II. What do you suppose these guys are doing with their heads covered here? Looks like they're all in some kind of prayer. Focus! So what are they praying to? If you don't believe in God, you don't believe in Jesus, what do you believe? What do they believe? Why do they want to rebuild the temple? Why did they bring us 911? What does prophecy say? You would think people would want to look into this. I apologize for this camera. Something wrong with the lighting. But I think you can see and get the point. This is no small matter. Alaya. The diaspora is that the Jews were not allowed to have a homeland for 2,000 years. And actually before that, if you consider Babylonia and the king coming down there in the Old Testament, Jeremiah, the Lord telling Jeremiah and telling the king of Babylonia to go down there and destroy Jerusalem because they were sacrificing their sons and daughters to the fires of Moloch. So they were dispersed all over the world. So pretty much they've been having problems for 5,000 years. And they're here in full force. They have nuclear weapons. It is not me or you who are haters. Some of us are waving the warning flag. Hey, wake up. They're dumping chemicals in the sky. They're installing microwave transmitters. Even Elon Musk is going to put 12,000 satellites in space, so he says, to radiate microwaves, Wi-Fi, 5G over our heads. We'll be living virtually in a microwave oven. And they want us to be stupid and not wake up. And if you do wake up and you sound the alarm, you're a hater. Of course they have to do that. But look what they've been doing for the past 100 years. Program called Alaya. You can look it up. It says it on this picture. It's Alaya Revolution. There is a world revolution going on by these small groups of people to control the world, and they're trying to demonize the rest of us. And they're doing a good job, and it looks like a lot of us are playing along. They can video what we do in the streets and our TV programming, and who's not going to believe that we're all not demonized? Do these people look like the demonized people over there in Israel? Look at this. They're waving their flags. They're in Israel. They've escaped the United States. They've escaped Germany and Britain and France and Argentina and Iraq and Iran. And countries all over the world, they've been encouraged, they've been pushed, they've been pulled. They want to have a revolution, Alaya. They have nuclear weapons. They control the banking systems. They control the militaries. And they've been moving to Israel. Look at this old train. They've been busy. And what have we been doing? They've been busy building a population of millions of people. Look on the plane, it says right there, Soldier Alaya Flight, Israeli Airlines. Look at all those people escaping the United States, escaping Canada, escaping Mexico. I say escaping because even recently they were told, because there's anti-Semitism is apparently rising all over the world because people are waking up, plus they're getting more aggressive, coming right out about building King Solomon's temple and all kinds of other things. So they're saying it's safer to live in Israel than to live in France. And they'll be saying that about countries. That's why they had the 911 and made it horrible in all those countries in the Middle East. And now why they're depopulating the Middle East, and they have plans for a greater Israel for all these people. And they use this propaganda like this couple here falling in love with Alaya. You can find your soulmate. They know how to use the mind control. The joy of Alaya. Joy of kosher. Joy of Alaya. Join me and my family for a behind-the-scenes look at our Alaya journey. Jamie. Don't miss out on a single episode. And of course, I watch a lot of videos on the internet about homesteading. That's what I find interesting. So these people are making videos about Alaya, their pilgrimage to leave the United States, to leave France and Britain and Germany and Austria and countries all over the world for this fulfillment of a biblical prophecy. Focus. Alaya Yahoo image site. So they even got this little boy here kissing the ground when they get into Israel. A journey through time, Israel, Alaya, rebirth of a nation. Look what it says on the bottom of this card. They have nuclear weapons. The rabbis, you can go look it up on the internet. No more news. And they say that the Gentiles, the non-Jews who do not go along and become willing slaves, will be put to death. So who's the hater here? A newly arrived Jewish immigrant from India recites a prayer upon arrival in Ben Gurion International Airport near Tel Aviv, November 21, 2006. They've been busy. We've been ignorant. They've been busy. We've been ignorant. They've been busy. We're not paying attention. They control America's money supply, the industry, the stock market, the military. And now they're trying to convince the legislative part of the government and the president to pass hate laws that you can't talk about these things. Meanwhile, this looks like a nice happy family. Alaya. This is serious business. Does anybody not think so? Is this life and death? Is this a spiritual journey? Meanwhile, propaganda in the United States is trying to social condition the people to believe that there is no God. Jesus Christ is outdated. It was a false religion created to control humans. And people buy that story. Do they know about Alaya and the six-pointed star? and World War I and World War II and 9/11 to bring all this about. Look at this old picture. They came in ships. They came in trains. I got modern picture. 3 generations of American Jewish immigration to Israel. That's what it says on this picture. Yahoo image site. You can go find it. Yahoo Images. Look up Aliyah. Aliyah, the rebirth of a nation. Look at this picture. Is there anything emotional about that? Passage of Noahide laws in secret. And that if you believe in a false deity, that's heresy, punishable by death, beheading. They're trying to get the President Donald Trump in a press release recently to enforce the Noahide laws, the Jewish God. Yahoo image site, Aliyah, you'll find the pictures. Create anti-Semitism. Convince Jews from all over the world to move to Israel, fulfilling prophecy. Aliyah means the return. There's something else interesting. I was when I showed those 2 clips earlier with Jared Kushner being mentioned. You might find this interesting. No More News. He said, Mr. Green, that Jared Kushner's name, Jared means a ruling, commanding, and coming down. Jared Kushner. His name means a ruler, commanding, and coming down. A ruler, commanding, coming down. Get it? A ruler who commands, who's coming down. And of course, No More News was saying, is this the Antichrist? Interestingly enough, when I heard him say that about what Jared meant, I looked up my name in the genealogy department in Orlando, Florida library. My first name means man of peace. My middle name is Joseph. It means God will increase. Man of peace, God will increase. And my last name, very similar to miracle, means God of Mars. Imagine me in the Orlando library looking up my name, Man of Peace, first name, middle name, God will increase, and last name, God of Mars. Makes you wonder, is there anything to this astrology and these different kinds of divination and numerology and all that stuff? So anyways, back to the book here. So we're talking about the Jews predominantly being migrated into the United States after World War I. And apparently they were using propaganda to get some sympathetic feelings so that the United States would bring 250,000, probably 500,000, probably at the end of the day 1 million of Jewish people from Eastern Europe after World War I. And apparently they had taken control of the United States money supply 6 months before they started World War I. World War I started in June 1914. They took over the USA money supply December 21st, 1913. So they knew what they were doing. They had to do that. They had to have a blank check to bring us World War I. And the goal was to get the Palestinians land so they could have Aliyah. And they had to use propaganda to raise the sympathies of people in America and the rest of the world to allow all these Jewish people to escape. Meanwhile, these are the same people who brought us World War I and World War II. And then they used the propaganda of the wars and the hatreds of the people, the anti-Semitism, to make people feel sorry for them and bring them over to the countries. And then they probably financed them, and they were buying up businesses and grasping for everything. They had a plan, Elia, fulfillment of biblical prophecy. And part of that involves, and there's a lot of books out there telling this, an antichrist deity. So it has to come true if you believe in this prophecy, biblical prophecy. And of course, like I keep saying, a lot of people today don't want to deal with it. They believe the propaganda. They don't want to believe there's a God. They want to believe Jesus was made up, didn't really exist. And they will convincingly look at you in the face and believe what they're telling you because they've been so social conditioned and educated for the past 80, 90 years. And even during the 1920s, etc., congressional hearings on the Jewish problem and communism, which is one and the same, they testified that they were going to infiltrate the education system, the medical system, and all of America's social systems and the world's social systems, so people would believe what they wanted people to believe. Okay, why did the Jews dislike the Morgenthau Report? I will get to it. Okay, so they were using the situation after World War I in Poland, and they say that we people in America could have learned something about the Polish people's experience. Especially is this true since it is impossible to pick up an American newspaper without finding traces of Jewish anti-Polish propaganda. So American newspapers owned by the elite were publishing in the American newspapers traces of Jewish anti-Polish propaganda. A propaganda which is designed to take our eyes away from the thing that is transpiring at the port of New York. If a reader of these articles should say, let us not think about Poland, let us think about the United States. The answer is that he already is thinking about Poland the way the Jews of the United States want him to think. And the fact that he is thinking according to Jewish wishes in this respect incapacitates him up to a certain point to understand the entire Jewish question in this country. So this would have been Henry Ford, the automaker's newspaper, in his newspaper, the Dearborn Independent. Is it hate speech to understand what he was trying to tell people back then? Is it anti-Semitism to talk about the problem in the world and what's going on and rebuilding King Solomon's temple and the destruction of the entire Middle East because they have plans for a greater Israel? A country that now has nuclear weapons is something called the Samson option. If the world tries to stop them, they'll send those nuclear missiles to cities all over the world and take the planet down in a flaming inferno. The Samson option. And apparently that's what Samson did in the Bible many years ago. He was chained to two poles, two columns, and he couldn't escape, so he pulled the two columns together with his muscles, and he crashed in and caved in the whole building and killed all the people. He destroyed everything, including himself. The Samson option. This is what we're dealing with. These are the people who control our world. So anyways, there's more to this book here. You can probably, if you can find these books. Jewish Activities in the United States, The International Jew, The World's Foremost Problem by Henry Ford Sr., being a reprint of the second selection of articles appearing from October 9th, 1920 to March 19th, 1921 from the Dearborn newspaper. I believe it was in Ohio. All right, so he says in this chapter here, 3 chapters back in this series, we presented part of a hearing before the United States Senate Committee on the censor question as affected the Jew. The censor question. Immigration. The immigration question appeared as part of the inquiry. So they were predominantly using propaganda and the Polish issue after World War I to bring in 250,000, it says here, Polish Jews into the United States. And Henry Ford bought the newspaper to get the word out on how that whole situation was turning out. And apparently these people were Yiddish-speaking people and would sit in the movie theaters and make fun of the rest of us singing their Yiddish Jewish songs, which, if interpreted, were pretty ugly. They really do hate us, and they mock us. But will people wake up? The politicians we have in office in the Senate, in the House of Representatives, Congress, in the presidency, even President Donald Trump on a coin, they're all controlled people who control this country. The only people who don't know are the masses of citizens from California to North Carolina, from Maine to Texas, and probably peoples in many other countries all over the world don't know who is really controlling things and what's planned. I wonder how many people, when pressed, when they do bring about this, let's say, enforcement of the Noahide laws that President George Bush Sr. Signed into law in 1991, that says if you believe in a false deity, it's heresy punishable by beheading. I wonder if people, when they're called to some kind of judge, everybody will have to probably stand in line. Do you accept this new deity as your God? Whatever name they give it. This Antichrist character. Do you reject Jesus Christ and God? What will people answer? How many people will go, well, I don't want to die. I'll reject Jesus. I'll reject God. And the people who say, no, I'm not going to. And you can see on No More News and all kinds of websites and videos on YouTube. Just look up King Solomon's Temple and rabbis and watch a variety of videos with these rabbis speaking themselves. They say they're going to do this. I've showed the videos. The immigration question appeared as part of this inquiry. The following then followed an article which showed that Jewish authorities adopt principles exactly opposite to those that had been defended before the United States senators. So they use these principles to get the government to bring over this 250,000 of Polish Jews to the United States. And Jewish authorities adopt principles exactly opposite to those which had been defended before the United States senators. So they lied to the United States government so they would allow these people to immigrate to our country. And Henry Ford had to buy a newspaper to get the word out about all the ugly things that were happening. The people who controlled our politicians and banking systems. The media. A third article followed showing how Jewish leaders resent the influence of the modern state upon Judaism. All these subjects are essential to a well-rounded understanding of the Jewish question as a whole in its relation to the United States. Today we go back to the home that 250,000 people who are so rapidly being landed on our shores to see what they did there and to find the basis for the Jewish propaganda statements that these people are fleeing from persecution. So that was in the United States newspaper. The Jews in Poland have to flee persecution. Remember, they had a good controlling hand in that country for 800 years. Many of the Jewish people who were fleeing Russia, because the Tsar of Russia, the leader, like a prime minister or a president, had police action because of the problems they had with the Jewish people. They had something called pogroms. They were limiting in their extent of what they can do. And remember, wherever these people went, they usually wound up controlling everything. And they had their own state, even if it didn't exist, called Israel, and their own Congress and governments, and they didn't want to adhere to any country's laws. They wanted to be a country within a country and be left to themselves. This is all acknowledged information. We have 5 official witnesses whose observations have been printed under the seals of the United States and the British government. So they were having congressional hearings back then, as we might expect with a 250,000 of Polish Jews coming to the United States pretty much exclusively. They even had organized barracks over there training these people on how and what to do and where to go, just like they do with the women's marches in the United States after President Donald Trump got elected. They had websites where women could go look at it and see how to get travel plans to Washington, D.C., and where to meet up and where to march and where to stay. These things are organized. Does anybody really think it's not? I mean, everybody accidentally shows up on the corner in a main city street for a gay pride parade? Not. Or a white supremacist parade. It's all accidental. Hey, let's go have a parade. No, it's announcements, it's planning, and somebody's behind it. Those expensive signs, nothing which we see is what it appears to be. We're being deceived. And apparently, like it says in this book, if people believe all this stuff that they're telling them, that's exactly what they want. Everything's going according to plan. The American document is a message from the President of the United States transmitted pursuant to a Senate resolution on October 28, 1919. A communication from the Secretary of State submitting a report by the Honorable Henry Morgenthau on the work of the mission of the United States to Poland. It is a Senate document number 177. So, the title of this chapter is Why the Jews Dislike the Morgenthau Report. So they were having congressional hearings, and they sent some seriously knowledgeable people over to Poland to make a report, to report back to Congress. Apparently they sent 5 different elite people from different parts of the world so they could get 5 different assessments as to the situation in Poland after World War I, where apparently they portrayed it as quite horrific so they could get all those Jews here in the United States. And then they were causing so much of a stir. Henry Ford bought a newspaper, and they were taking over businesses and enterprises and grasping at everything they could. And they were probably well financed. It didn't depend on a credit report. It depended upon if you were Jewish. And they had a plan called Zionism and the creation of the State of Israel. And remember, the United States banking system was owned by the Illuminati, Rothschilds, Rockefellers, Schiffs, and Morgans. These same people that brought us World War I and World War II. If they didn't take over our money supply, they could have never financed World War I and World War II. All right, so you got some idea what's going on here. The Honorable Henry Morgenthau on the work of the mission of the United States to Poland. So they said there's propaganda so people would buy it hook, line, and sinker that all of these Jewish people were being persecuted beyond belief, so they had to escape and come to New York. And then Henry Ford and a lot of other people were noticing the way they were acting with arrogance and taking over things, and who knows what they were involved in. And again, I must say, I am not a hater of anybody. I don't recommend anybody hating anything or anybody or taking any kind of physical aggressive action. I believe in God. I believe that Jesus was sent here from the spiritual world, not this deity, this Messiah they're waiting for that won't come until they rebuild King Solomon's temple. I do not believe that character is God. And prophecy says it's an Antichrist character. So that I do hate deception, if it was anything to hate. And I am certainly not a fan of fallen angels and demons and Lucifer, satanic beings, sacrificing humans like apparently these groups are doing, the witchcraft organizations. You can go look it up. Look up witchcraft holidays and see some of those pictures. Look up Illuminati, whistleblowers, plenty of evidence. I've gone over much of it. People don't want to deal with it. I wonder how that's going to work out for us. So anyways, so they had this report. The document includes also a supplementary report signed by Brigadier General Edgar Jarwin, United States Army. This is a serious business. There is a certain mystery about the document. Though an edition was printed for public circulation, it soon became extremely rare. So they went over there and they made some reports, but apparently they didn't want the American people to know the information. It seemed to disappear almost overnight. The copy from which this present examination was made was secured with the utmost difficulty. The head of the American mission, which remained in Poland from July 13th to September 13th, 1919, was Henry Morgenthau, an American Jew who had been United States Minister to Turkey, a man of excellent public and private reputation. So this Henry Morgenthau was an American Jew, and he went over there to make a report for the Congress of the United States. And apparently they didn't like it, and it was suppressed. It is commonly said that the Jews did not like his report, hence its scarcity. This much appears. The Jewish press has never made much of it. It is not cited in Jewish propaganda. It has not had the endorsement of American Jewry. The reason appears to be this, that it told the calm truth about the situation of the Jews in Poland and made very fair observances. But it is indirectly that American Jews show the opinion which they hold of the Morgenthau report. And it comes about in this way. When the American mission left Poland, the British mission arrived and remained until December. So the Brits were sending people over there to assess the situation. The chief member of the British mission was the English Jew, Sir Stuart Samuel, whose brother Herbert is now High Commissioner of Palestine. Oh my. So back then in 1919, the English Jew, chief member of the British mission, Sir Stuart Samuel, whose brother is the High Commission in Palestine. So apparently, if he wasn't friendly to non-Jews and they wanted Palestine for themselves, you might say the fox was in charge of the hen house. Why would they put this man in? I've gone over this material in Carol Quigley's book. He makes that observation, as well as many other people. But we know the insiders are controlling everything, or we should know that. He was accompanied by British military officer Captain P. Wright, who also submitted a supplementary report. So you have the Henry Morgenthau report. You got the Stuart Samuel report. And now we also have the Captain P. Wright report. The two reports were submitted with an introductory report by Sir H. Rambold, British representative at Warsaw, Poland. So you got all these different people making reports. So now, of all 5 reports, the Morgenthau report, Samuel report, Jarwin report, and the Wright report, and the Rambold report, The Jews of the United States have circulated only one, the Samuel Report. So they had 5 reports done on the situation in Poland, and the Jewish media, the journalists, the magazines, and everywhere only circulated one. So out of the 5 Jewish people sent there to make these reports, Jewish or not, there was only one that they favored, and that would have been the English Jew, Sir Stuart Samuel. It had been printed in full in newspapers at advertising rates. So people paid to put his report in newspapers, and they had to suppress the Morgenthau report. It has been printed in full in newspapers at advertising rates. It has been circulated, broadcast as an American Jewish Congress bulletin. Any member of Samuel reports may be obtained, any number of them. So everybody could get a copy of Samuel's report, but none of the report which a member of the American Diplomatic Service made, and which the President of the United States transmitted as a message to the Senate. Why? Because full reports examine the situation all around and report it without bias. And if they were printed in the United States and spread broadcast before the people, it would throw an entirely different light on the Jewish propaganda in favor of the Polish immigration in enormous numbers. So the Jewish propaganda, which was in favor of the Polish Jewish immigration in large numbers, if the reports were published that they didn't like, people would think twice about that, giving special favor to the Polish Jews. You know, it should be a few people from every country. Of course, America welcomes immigrants. But apparently back then it was slighted in favor of certain peoples whose leaders controlled the United States money supply, controlled our politicians, had their president in our presidency in the United States. So apparently, like I said, to get the money they needed to buy up American businesses and properties and everything else, they didn't need a credit report. Makes you wonder about this artificial intelligence computer system coming online. And over there in China, they're already grading people on social behavior. And apparently they want to do that here in the United States. And apparently if you've been watching my videos and No More News and other people's videos, and David Icke is coming out with a lot of good videos these days, Dane Wigington, and so many others, Richie from Boston, Joe Imbranio, however you say his name. So I watch all these people's videos. I don't go to one source, and I read all these books. And I want to find out what really happened in history and probably what's happening now. I do not believe that is a hate speech by any means. I believe I can read this book and learn about what these intelligent leaders of America did back then, the congressional hearings and the reports that were suppressed and the reports that were spread around, and what was the purpose. Why did Henry Ford, the automaker, go out of his way, and he was demonized for it, to go buy a newspaper to get the word out when nobody else would tell the truth? Even when the Jews of the United States published the Samuel Report, they did not publish the Captain Wright Report, which accompanied it. In the American Jewish Congress Bulletin, the Wright Report was condensed, mutilated, and shorn of its real meaning, while the Maccabean, the report of Rambold and Wright, are treated without courtesy, and the Samuel Report was published in full. That the reader may form his own conclusions, the testimony of the 5 official witnesses, or 6, if we count Homer H. Johnson, who signed the American report with General Jarwin, will be given on the principal point in agreements and disagreements, and will therefore be noticeable. So what was in these reports about the situation of the Polish Jews in Poland after World War I? And the propaganda in the newspapers that say they were in dire straits, anti-Semitism had run amok, and we need to rescue all the Jews and bring them to America. true or false. And the Jews had been living in Poland for 800 years. And remember also, this is important, what else happened after World War I? An espionage event, not a revolution. People get that mixed up. Some people were transported into Russia. They abducted the Tsar and his family and others, took them to a building in the country and executed them all. His family, the leader of Russia. And it began 15, 20 years, a slaughter of over 100 million people. According to Jeff Rentz's website, there's a document. Apparently 25 million people admitted in an Israeli newspaper. But they call it a Russian revolution. Again, propaganda. It was an espionage event after World War I. Russia did not see this coming. Just like after 9/11, all the people's emotions are up. The Middle East never seen this coming. It was all planned. Like back then. Like World War I and World War II. All planned. We all never seen it coming. My question is, can we see World War III coming? With the Noahide laws, King Solomon's temple. They're waiting for this Messiah. They believe in this deity, this God, and they are serious. But they don't want us to be serious about God or Jesus and Christianity and family values. We're haters for that. So they say. Common sense has left the building. People have been mind-controlled, zombies in the streets. It's bizarre, I know. That the reader may, from his own conclusions, the testimony of the 5 official witnesses, or 6 if you count Homer H. Johnson. So number 1, on the general subject of persecution. This is Sir Stuart Samuel says, the one report they liked. Poles generally are a generous nature. This is what Sir Stuart Samuel says about the Poles. And this is the report that the Jews published everywhere. He says the Poles are generally of a generous nature, and if the present incitements of the press were repressed by a strong official hand, Jews would be able to live as they have done for the past 800 years on good terms with their fellow citizens in Poland. Did you just hear me? Sir Stuart Samuel says, if the press, the newspapers, the media, were repressed, so if the people who own the newspapers were not allowed to tell or print what they were printing, by the strong official hand, by the government, the Jews would be able to live as they have done for the past 800 years on good terms with their fellow citizens in Poland. So apparently the press, the media in Poland, according to this guy, was saying things, true or false, that were riling up the citizens, which made it difficult for the Jews. So I suspect that the press could be talking about what was going on next door with the Bolshevik Jewish Revolution, where they were killing up to 100 million people. You don't think they would write about that in the Polish newspapers about communism? I know the Polish people were deathly afraid of communism. Germany didn't want communism. The United States was having hearings. We didn't want communism. So obviously all that killings and goings on in Russia, next door to Poland, would have been in the newspapers. Communism was trying to take over Poland. So apparently that stuff made the newspapers. And this Samuel says here, if we could suppress what the newspapers printed, we wouldn't have any problems with the Jews continuing to live in Poland. You know, and he might be right. Probably is. Note how easily Sir Stuart talks about repression of the press. The Polish press has at least obtained freedom of writing. So after World War I, the Polish press has at least obtained freedom of writing. And remember, the Jewish people were in controlling a good portion of Poland for 800 years. And they would not have allowed, prior to World War I, the press to say the things they were saying. It is exercising a privilege which the Jewish press of Poland has always had. So after World War I, the Poles actually gained some control over their own newspapers. But now that it speaks freely of Jews, repress it with a strong hand, says Sir Stuart. He would not dare suggest that in England, where the press also is finding its freedom, as to the Yiddish press in Poland, the reader will find some information in Israel, Freelander's essay, The Problem of Polish Jewry. Freelander was a Jew, and his book is published by a Jewish house in Cincinnati. He says, and I'm not going to get much of this done in this 2-hour video, but you're getting the point here. The Yiddish press sprang up and became a powerful civilizing agency among the Jews of Poland. So here in the United States, regrettably, the truth about what's going on in the Middle East, King Solomon's Temple, the Sanhedrin trying to coerce our government, the Congress, House of Representatives, the President to enforce Noahide laws, and probably declaring that Jesus was a false Messiah. Anybody who wished to remain a Christian would be guilty of heresy, punishable by beheading. How bizarre will it get? And of course, we've had threats of a nuclear holocaust and economic collapse and sustainability, global warming, pole shifts. They've been beating the drums with all this fear-mongering for a long time, and I'm sure it has worn a lot of people out. Meanwhile, they're advancing their technological equipment everywhere, and geoengineering, environmental attack, social attack on our minds, the children's, everybody's, drugs, other things, toxins in the food, GMOs, fluorides, aluminum. Oh my. The extent of its influence may be gathered from the fact, which curiously enough is pointed out reproachfully by the Poles, that the leading Yiddish newspaper in Warsaw, Poland, commanded but a few years ago a larger circulation than that of all the Polish newspapers combined. So prior to World War I, the Jews were well in control of Poland. So Henry Morgenthau in his report, paragraph 7, so this is the report they suppressed, and they liked Samuel Stewart's report. The soldiers had been inflamed by the charge that Jews were Bolsheviks, while at Leningrad it was associated with the idea that the Jews were making common cause with the Ukrainians. These excesses were therefore political as well as anti-Semitic in character. So remember, we had the Bolshevik Jews who had espionage, made their way into Russia, abducted the Tsar, his family, executed everybody, and were proceeding with a purge to create this communist state country of Russia. And the purge was they had to kill all the non-Jews, Christians, who they felt would be a threat to this Russian communist empire. And if you look up Jeff Rentz's site and Bolshevik Jews invading Russia and killing 100 million people, or just type in those words on the internet and you'll get plenty of information. There's plenty of reports. Some reports say 66 million. Israeli newspaper admits 25 million. Jeff Rentz's report, whoever published it, says 100 million. But the bottom line, after World War I, that through espionage and guerrilla warfare, they wound up secretly taking over the country, which probably was not alerted to this being destroyed from the inside with a lot of abductions and murders. And I suppose that could happen in the United States or any country if you're not paying attention. And apparently we're not paying attention right now because we're being destroyed little by little. Go look up Deborah Travers and her material, a current video, it is quite alarming. Even David Icke, Dane Wigington, so many people. No More News. Do you think all these people, all those thousands of millions of videos on YouTube and thousands of alternate news sites, do you think they're all lying? Was Henry Ford lying? Was Henry Morgenthau in this report lying? So again, Henry Morgenthau, the one they repressed, his report, he says, paragraph 8, just as the Jews would resent being condemned as a race for the action of a few of their co-religionists, so it would be correspondingly unfair to condemn the Polish nation as a whole, for the violence committed by an uncontrolled troops or local mobs. So there was a built-up hatred to the Jews in Poland because they were in leading positions in controlling the country for many years. Those excesses were apparently not premeditated, for if they had been part of a preconceived plan, the number of victims would have run into the thousands instead of amounting to about 280. So you got the whole country of Poland, millions of people, and apparently there were 280 Jewish victims. And if the people were all really seriously anti-Semitic and wanted to kill them, there would, of course, been many more. Like there were in other countries, in Spain and France and Britain and Italy. They were exiled and banished from those countries. And apparently the only way they got back in the 1500s and 1600s was through espionage again, taking over from the inside, and having the King of Britain executed, having the King of France executed. And it's in books like Nestor Webster's World Revolution and many other books. So the tide has turned in the 1700s and 1800s and 1900s in their favor, and they're bringing about this with their arrogance, the premeditated control and coercion to bring us this Noahide laws of a religion, their religion, the rebuilding of King Solomon's temple, this effort to promote globalism and not nationalism. It is believed that these excesses were the result of a widespread anti-Semitic prejudice aggravated by the belief that the Jewish inhabitants were politically hostile to the Polish state. So that's what Morgenthau said. Sir H. Rambold says, it is giving the Jews very little real assistance to single out, as if sometimes done for reprobation and protest, the country where they have perhaps suffered least. So they were in Poland for 800 years, a country where they have suffered least in their entire history. So obviously the Poles were quite generous and amenable, passive people. And being in control of the whole country right next door to Russia, one could understand how they could orchestrate the invasion and the killing of Christians and other good people for the next 10 or 15 years, and the destruction of all the Christian churches. And why the agitation was going on and on and on in Russia, why the Tsar were policing the Jewish people because of the problems. And remember, even back then in the 1500s and 1600s and 1700s and 1800s and 1900s, they wanted to get another homeland. They wanted their return to the ancient kingdom of Judea, which was destroyed twice, apparently, by God. 3 times by these fallen angels and demons, if you want to include the Great Flood. So what kind of beings are these beings that they worship and sacrifice humans to? And the Revelation in the Bible says a synagogue of Satan. A lot of people don't want to believe in that stuff. But world reality, current events are taking place. Captain P. Wright says, It is an explanation often given of what may be called, according to the point of view, the idiosyncrasies or defects of the Jews, that they have been an oppressed and persecuted people. So Captain Wright, I better show you this. Somebody will say I'm saying hate speech. Captain Wright says, it is an explanation often given, what may be called, according to the point of view, the idiosyncrasies or defects of the Jews, that they have been an oppressed and persecuted people. So they're blaming it on some kind of defect of the Jews, why they have been an oppressed and persecuted people. So the fact is, they have been an oppressed and persecuted people for 2,000 years. 5,000 years, if you want to believe some authors and material that I've gone over recently. 5,000 years, and the Bible. The Exodus from Egypt, captivity in Egypt. The Exodus from Babylonia, captivity in Babylonia. The dispersal throughout the world with no country for 2,000 years since Jesus Christ. And now Eliah, the return. And now they have nuclear weapons and the Samson option. And they're going to rebuild the temple and force their religion on the rest of us. Does anybody else see that there's something seriously wrong with this? Does anybody watching my video believe that all of this is false? And if it is true, is it a serious problem? This is an idea so charitable and humane that I should like to think not only of the Jews but of every other people. It has every merit as a theory except that of being true. So Captain Wright says that they have a defect just isn't true. When one thinks of what happened to the other racial, religious, and linguistic people who spoke different languages. I have a speech impediment on some words, if you haven't noticed. Linguistic minorities of Europe in modern times, the Jews appear not as the most persecuted, but as the most favored people of Europe. Well, I don't know where Captain Wright got that. If they were driven out of countries for 2,000 years, which is well documented and admitted, even congressional hearings in the United States. Brigadier General Jardwin states clearly, remember there were 5 different people making reports, possibly 6 reports, if you include added material to one report. Brigadier General Jardwin states clearly that the persecution cry may be regarded as propaganda. He says the disorders of November 21 to 23 in Lamberg became like the excesses in Lithuania, a weapon of foreign anti-Polish propaganda. The press bureau of the Central Powers, in whose interest it lay to discredit the Polish Republic before the world, permitted the publication of articles in which an eyewitness estimated the number of victims between 2,500 and 3,000, although the extreme number furnished by the local Jewish committee was 76. And again, in common with all free governments of the world, Poland is faced with the danger of a political and international propaganda to which the war has given rise. The coloring, the invention, the suppression of news, the subordination of newspapers by many different methods, and the poisoning by secret influences of the instruments affecting public opinion. In short, all the methods of malevolent propaganda are a menace from which Poland is a notable sufferer. Of course, all this propaganda has been Jewish. The methods described are typically Jewish. Speaking about the number killed, Mr. Morgenthau estimates the total at 258. Sir H. Rambold says that only 18 were killed in Poland proper. The others, having been killed in the disorders of the war zone, Sir Samuel Stewart estimates the total killed at 348. Remember, this is World War I. And remember, after World War I was the Bolshevik Jewish invasion of Russia, where apparently, according to a lot of research material, they killed up to 100 million people, including Christians, and destroyed Christian churches. And I think, and then had an iron curtain around Russia after World War I, right up until World War II. And they were slaughtering 100 million people in Russia for revenge, destroying the Christian churches but not the Jewish temples. And then, of course, we had World War II. And I do not believe that the banksters, the Illuminati, the Zionists, ever lost control of Russia. I do not believe they've lost control of Russia. They've certainly not lost control of the United States. The banking system, our politics, the medical institutions. Apparently Rothschilds have much power and ownership in the electrical grid, the energy industries, the water facilities, the sewer facilities, and of course the oil and everything else. Oh my, they have control over everything. And apparently they're getting ready to fulfill this prophecy with the climax of a coming Messiah. And they're publicly announcing it. They consecrated the altar at the ancient site of King Solomon's temple a couple months ago. So they're consecrating, having a ritual, dedicating the altar. So if they're dedicating the altar, they're printing the coin with President Donald Trump's face on it. And all these other videos you can go watch on No More News and other people's news who are talking about these things. They are moving along, and they intend to make this happen and pass laws to say that talking about it is hate speech. And of course, if they can't get you through the legal system, they have assassins. They can discredit people. And they have the microwave transmission systems, 5G, and all those transmitters. And so they probably can take somebody out, and nobody will even know why that person grabbed their chest, or their blood vessels in their head just popped and their eyes popped. This is going to be quite horrendous, whatever they're planning, especially if we just think about history, what they've already done. And if history does repeat itself, where is all this going to take us? And if they have been bringing all these people to Israel by creating anti-Semitism all over the world, focus. These are pictures you can go look up on the internet under Yahoo Images Aliyah program, and you can see what's going on. So you think these people believe they have a religion and their pronouncements of the coming Messiah, and they don't want the rest of us to believe in Jesus as the Messiah, making it actually illegal, punishable by death and beheading? We all have a choice. I'm personally not joining their team. How about you? Thank you for watching my video, Rick Miracle reporting.